Hello, my name is Glyn Lloyd. I'm a partner at Newfields, a boutique immigration firm which specialises in sport and business immigration in the UK. Today's session covers the new International Sportsperson visa category, which was introduced in October this year. The International Sportsperson visa route is designed for athletes and coaches aged 16 or over who wish to enter the UK for professional sports activities. It's intended to create a simplified visa arrangement than what we had before. So what are the main differences between the International Sportsperson visa, let's call it the ISP, and what we had previously? Well, before we had the Tier 2 and the Tier 5 sports rules, and they're now abolished. They no longer exist. Those Tier 2 and those Tier 5 rules have been replaced by a single category called the ISP. So what does that mean? Well, let's start with what hasn't changed. Firstly, sports people wanting to come to the UK, wanting to stay in the UK, will still need a sporting governing body to issue them with an endorsement, a type of confirmation that that sportsperson is classified as elite. How do you prove that you're elite? Well, each year the sporting governing bodies and the Home Office will discuss and they'll agree criteria as to the definition of an elite sportsperson for that particular sport. The criteria can often be found on the sports body's governing website. Secondly, athletes will still need to be contracted or employed by a club, an association or a sporting organisation based in the UK that has a sponsor licence. Those sponsor licences will be issued by the Home Office. So really no major changes from that perspective. So what is different? Well, instead of Tier 2 and Tier 5, the sportsperson now applies for an ISP visa, and that ISP visa will cover one of two periods. Either an ISP visa which is 12 months or less, let's call that a short-term ISP, or an ISP visa which is more than 12 months, a long-term ISP. You'll only qualify for a long ISP, that is an ISP visa of more than 12 months, on two conditions. The first condition is that you have a contract which is longer than 12 months. And the second is that you meet the English language requirement. You can meet the English language requirement if you sit a very basic English language test, although nationals from majority English speaking countries will not need to sit those English language tests. As before, a sportsperson can initially enter the UK with a short-term ISP, and then on meeting the English language requirement and or securing a contract extension, they can then extend their permission to stay in the country for the longer period. If extending that way, a new governing body endorsement issued by the sporting governing body will be required. And importantly, these extension processes can be undertaken from within the UK. The sportsperson doesn't need to return to their home country in order to submit a new visa application. So under this new regime, is a visa always required in advance of travelling to the UK? Well, sports people based outside the UK with no UK visa at all must generally undertake a visa application process overseas before coming to the UK. Previously, certain sports people could be granted permission to enter the UK at the UK border itself for periods of up to 3 months if they had a contract and if they had a governing body endorsement issued by this sporting governing body for a period no longer than 3 months. There's no need to undertake a visa process overseas. The sportsperson simply came to the UK with some certain documentation and they were stamped in at the airport. That has now been abolished. And abolishing that concession won't sit well with clubs who want to quickly recruit players for short periods, for example, for up to 3 months, for injury cover. Ultimately, that change will bring about both delays and costs which didn't previously exist, because we must now generally undertake that visa process outside of the UK in most circumstances. The most significant changes under this new ISP requirement will be for those sports people who spend longer periods of time inside the UK. Firstly, there's no upper limit on how long an international sportsperson can stay in the UK in this category. Previously, a Tier 5 sportsperson was limited to periods of 12 months in the UK. A Tier 2 sportsperson could spend up to 6 years on that visa route. And before the expiry of that 6-year period in the UK, they either had to apply for indefinite leave to remain or settlement, or they had to leave the country. Now, getting ILR, indefinite leave to remain, quickly and cheaply wasn't possible then. It still isn't possible now. But what this change to the requirements mean now is that it removes some of those pressures for sports people. So sports people are now not pressured into applying for indefinite leave to remain before the end of spending 6 years in the UK under this sporting category. The prospect of having to leave the UK for failing to apply for indefinite leave to remain within 6 years has been removed. Those who do wish to settle, who wish to apply for indefinite leave to remain, must, among other criteria, show that they're being paid a salary of at least £35,800 a year. That was the case before the ISP came into place, and that continues to be the case now. Whilst many sports people will achieve that salary, a number of those sports people playing in the lower leagues, including those in newly emerging professional sports, will not be earning that sum. Many women's sports don't in fact reach this salary threshold, putting that particular group at a disadvantage. So whilst the salary threshold remains problematic, because some sports people will never be able to settle because they'll never be able to earn that money, the fact that there is now no limit on the time that you can spend under the ISP category means that sports people can continue to submit applications to stay in the UK. They can continue putting visa applications through without worrying about the 6-year cap in the UK. There is also another substantial change for those sports people who are looking to settle in the UK. Any time spent under the International Sportsperson visa route, or who have spent time under the Tier 2 or Tier 5 route previously, can now bundle that time together towards the 5 years that are required to qualify for indefinite leave to remain. That's important because previously time spent under the Tier 5 category did not count towards the 5-year requirement for indefinite leave to remain, but the Home Office have explicitly reversed that position. This means that if you are a sports person who has Tier 5 leave now, or who previously had Tier 5 leave, you can count that time under the Tier 5 towards the requirement for indefinite leave to remain. That's important really for sports people who find that they enjoy life in the UK and do ultimately want to settle in the UK, possibly want to apply for British citizenship. It's also important from the club's perspective because it enables clubs to get players in quickly at the start of a contract without having to go through some of the delays which were previously in place that arose because the player had to sit English language tests in order to qualify for the Tier 2 route, which at that time was the only route which would qualify towards settlement. So now it means that a lot of sports people can in fact apply for settlement far sooner than what they might have anticipated.
Importantly, sports people then and their family members and clubs will not be affected by any of the changes presented under this new ISP route. If you're currently on Tier 2 or Tier 5, then you can transition into the new ISP route as and when the sportsperson is granted a new contract or a contract extension. Likewise, there's nothing required on the part of clubs and sporting organisations.
So, are there any other changes that arise from this visa route, particularly from the perspective of clubs or sporting organisations that contract and sponsor international sports people? Well, the sponsor licences held by clubs and sporting organisations have been converted automatically to the new system. So clubs and sponsors do not need to make any changes to accommodate the new ISP route. The sponsor management systems held by those clubs, and when I talk about sponsor management systems, I'm talking about the online portal which exists between the club and the Home Office, have been changed. And those sponsor management systems no longer refer to Tier 2 and Tier 5. They simply refer to the ISP route. So previously, clubs might have certificates of sponsorship, that is, digital certificates to sponsor international sports people and to support their visa applications, would be subcategorized into Tier 2 and Tier 5. Whereas now, all certificates have been bundled together under the one ISP heading. That will help sponsors and clubs manage their allocation of certificates far better. There's now a single expiry date by which all certificates of sponsorship expire. Whereas previously you might have had a system where your Tier 2 certificates would expire on one date, the Tier 5 certificates would expire on another date, and it would require good management and good proactivity to ensure that the club always had plenty of certificates of sponsorship to assign to their sports people. UK immigration is complicated, and so if you do have any queries arising from anything that's been mentioned in today's session, or indeed about any other part of the immigration rules, then do please contact us and we'd be delighted to provide you with some advice. Many thanks for your time today.